Hi, and welcome to the Italian Horse Podcast, where we discover spirituality together. And beautiful Phoebe is back today. Hi, Phoebe.
Hi.
All good?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. And we have many subjects we could talk about, but today specifically, we're going to talk about how to guide children in their when they see spirit, when they have psychic abilities, and you know all about it.
Yes.
And it's from for your point of view, you knew you saw spirit when you were a child. So why don't we start there and then slowly grow into how do you do with your baby boy?
Yes. Start at the beginning. So, I've seen spirits since I remember. So, I guess very, very, very young. I used to mainly see them at night time when I was little. Used to wake up screaming, saying someone was in my room, or completely terrified. That actually went on for until I was about 22. I used to wake up in the night and be terrified, and my mum used to be like, oh my gosh, what's wrong, like what's wrong with you? But luckily, I mean, my parents are very open-minded when it comes to all sorts of things. They have lots of connections in different spaces and things like that. So my mum was quite good at being understanding. However, I think it was still quite confusing for her, like what this was that I used to kind of experience all the time. And we had various things that happened throughout my childhood. Yeah, so we used to live in this house. It was extremely old, an old shooting lodge. When we first moved there, I always found the energy really uncomfortable. I used to be really scared. I wouldn't want to be home on my own. And I was a teenager. I wasn't a kid then. I was, older. But I would never want to be on my own. I'd always be scared. And I used to see this little boy in the night. I used to wake up and he used to be sat at the end of my bed, and he wasn't threatening or, like a horrible energy. He was just really curious, and he'd sit at the end of my bed, and I would automatically wake up and jump and be terrified. And then he'd disappear. And I had my brother was quite little at the time, so I used to wake up and be like, oh, is that Robson? Is that not Robson? No, that's definitely not Robson. Go back to sleep. That's scary. And then my mum started to see him as well, interestingly. So that was where it all started to be, from this space of Phoebe's crazy, and I used to get told, you've got such a wild imagination. You could write a book with your imagination, Phoebe. And it was really, I guess, it was sad for me to be able to see things so clearly and then have it dismissed all the time as my imagination when it was so real. And now as an adult, I know it was real, but it left me in a really uneasy space. Like I didn't really understand it at all. And therefore I was even more terrified because nobody really got it. But we had all sorts of situations at the house. We had actually a time when my mum had to get a medium to come to the house because there was an activity in my room for a long period of time over years that started to get incredibly heavy and really hard for me to be in. And when the medium came, she didn't know anything about what I'd seen, what I'd experienced. And I was in my 20s at the time, and she kind of went into my room and was in there for a while, came back out, and she described the person that I was seeing, why he was there, the whole reason why he wouldn't leave, the reason why he was waking me up and trying to tell me something. Yeah, and again, that was another verification to me. You're not mad. Like, you're not making this up. Like, what you're seeing is fine. But I did shut it down. I massively shut it down because of fear and because I didn't understand. Until obviously then my dad passed away, and then that's when I really was like, right, this is now time I'm going to explore it.
Yeah, then you start to open up yourself as well.
Yeah, because
And sorry, you saw your mom, you said your mom saw the boy as well. And did your mom knew who it was? Like,
no.
was it family, or was it her? Did it appear to be a spirit guide, or who
No.
was the boy?
Well, there's an interesting story that comes with the little boy. So he was, this little boy, I would say he was around 6 years old. And I would see him, and then mum started seeing him. She'd kind of be in the mirror, like brushing her teeth, and she'd feel someone pulling at the bottom of her jumper or her dress. And she'd turn around, assuming it was my little brother, and there'd be nobody there. Then she had one of her friends was over for the day, and she does a lot of work with angels. She's a medium. And she turned around to my mum and she was like, oh, there's a little boy that's hangs around in like the garden and the house, and he's completely harmless. She was like, but he died when he was really young, and I think he died here. And mum was like, oh, that's so interesting. And then time went on, and we had just a random, like at the top of the driveway, there were gates that you had to kind of buzz to get through. And someone buzzed the gate one day, and it was these two really old gentlemen, really lovely. And they asked if they could come down and talk to us because they had photos of the house before any renovation work was done. Like it was back in like black and white photo days. And they'd been passed down in like their family line from someone who used to own the house. So mum was like, of course, like, that's so interesting, come down, we'd love to chat with you. So these two lovely men walked down, came in the kitchen, got all these photos out of all the house and how it used to look, and it was amazing to see. And then there was a photo of the family, and there was 4 people. There was a mum and a dad and a daughter, and then there was this little boy, and it was the little boy. I like, hand on heart, me and my mum looked at each other. My mum kind of like whispered, she was like, don't say anything, don't say anything, don't say anything. And I was like, that's the boy that we see, like that's the little boy that we see. And they didn't know anything about the family, they didn't have any kind of information on them. But again, it was another verification, you're not crazy, Phoebe, like what you see is real and it's okay. So yeah, lots of things like that happened at that house. That house was quite a big learning curve, because of how much spiritual activity there was there.
Wow.
Big thing. Yeah.
But it's beautiful that your mum also understood, and your dad as well. Because I think we all see that children do see those things, and like you just said, like spot on, that this like it's your imagination. And when children are getting told that, they're starting to start believing it, and that's when they may be a bit older, that all of a sudden their abilities just stop.
Yeah, they disappear. Because if you're told it's your imagination over and over again, you're going to disconnect from that part fully and associate it purely with imagination until you're past that point in childhood where you almost grow out of that imaginative play. And then things that, you know, you might still continue into adult life, and you might, you know, jump and randomly see something, things like that, but you're just going to associate it back to that conditioning of it's your imagination, it's not actually there, it's not real, and you'll be so convinced that that's the truth.
Yes.
Which is really, I completely get it, because there's no like education on how to raise children that see things.
No.
And it's fearful, I guess, as well for parents when you have, like, for me, not so much because I do work with spirit, but I guess for my parents, even though they were so open, it was so unknown to them too. So they didn't really know what to do with me. Like when I'm waking up still at 20 years old, screaming my head off, and, you know, all of these things, I think it probably was quite hard on them too at the time. And luckily, like I said, they had lots of connections, and we kind of spoke to quite a few people and things like that. But I still was so fearful for so many years until my dad died, because it terrified me. I had no control over it. And only now I've been in the work I've been doing, and I've worked with some incredible mediums in their circles, I know how to control it, so I won't get woken up at nighttime, and things like that don't happen to me anymore because I'm protected before I sleep, and completely closed down. Whereas as a child, you're not closed down, you're open, you know, especially when you sleep, it's when you open up the most. So it was scary, very scary.
Yes, I imagine. Yeah, because you must feel quite alone as well. Because did you have any friends as well that you could talk to? Because nobody would understand, probably.
Nobody would understand. I always told, like, my closest friends that I've known for years always knew that I've always seen kind of all sorts of things and had like strange experiences, and I wouldn't stay at people's houses, all things like that. And they've always known it, but they've never understood it. They'd just be like, oh, it's Phoebe, it's her imagination, or she gets night terrors, or she just doesn't like the dark. Like, I won't, and I still now, okay, I'm 33, I don't sleep in the dark, and I won't. I say to my husband, we have to have a light on in the hallway, and he's like, but why? And I'm like, because the fear of waking up and something being there and the room being completely dark, I can't do that, and I refuse to do that. So I still sleep, and there's nothing wrong with it. I'm a proud woman at 33 who sleeps with the light on in the hallway.
Yeah, well, I think it's fair enough. If that's a tool that protects you, because you are more open than most people, that's what you got to do. You have to protect yourself. And there's nothing to be, you know, embarrassed about or anything, I think, because that's just what it is.
Exactly. And it keeps me less scared when I wake up, and if happens to be somebody there, at least I can see properly rather than it being completely dark.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh dear.
Beautiful. And so then you come into the journey yourself, that your dad passed away and you opened up yourself again, and he connected with you. That's also how you wrote your book,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
And I'll put the link again in the descriptions for people who want to read it. And then also you're a mom,
Mm.
and then you have a beautiful, well, you've got a beautiful family, and one particular one has he sees spirit.
Yeah. Yeah, he
Uh,
does. He is me as a child.
yes. Wow. And when did you know,
Mm.
and how do you go about it?
So yeah, I explored my mediumship and obviously got a really good understanding of that. And then the first time I realized Leo, so he's going to be 6 soon. But the first time I realized when he could see spirit was he had 2 friends, okay, and they were called Bobby and Harvey. The most random names. We didn't know anyone called Bobby, anyone called Harvey. There was no one at preschool. He was only 2. And he had such a relationship with these 2 people. He would tell me all sorts of things about where they had died, where they'd been before they came here. Leo used to, and he still can if you put him in the right space, but he used to be so good at giving you memories of his past lives.
Oh,
And he would talk about, this happened to me before I came here, and this is what it looked like before I chose to live with you as my family, before I chose you. And he used to say all this amazing, incredible stuff. And be so like, I was never prompting him like, oh, tell me where you were before you came here. He'd be like, oh, mum, I remember, like, and he'd go into this whole story of like what happened for him to choose that I would be his mum and things like that.
wow.
So he had these 2 friends called Bobby and Harvey, and it was a real and when I honestly, they might as well have been actually here. He would not come inside unless he hadn't held the door open for them. He was like, come on, Bobby and Harvey. Or I'd shut the door and be like, mum, you've left Bobby and Harvey outside. And I'd be like, oh, sorry, Bobby and Harvey, come
Oh,
in.
wow.
We'd had like, he'd want them to have spaces at dinner and be like, you need to get a plate for Bobby. It was really, really interesting. And obviously, because of how I work, I was so open to it. I didn't say, you know, that's just your imagination, leave them outside, or it's just your imagination, they don't need a plate. I would, in a way, entertain it and be like, yeah, of course, we'll get Bobby and Harvey a plate. Like, that's so fine.
Yeah.
Because I just didn't want to shut it down. But that went on for a while, and he would talk about, yeah, all of his past life stuff and all these things. And he'd often do this thing that I've noticed, which my other little boy doesn't do, where you'd be talking to him and he would switch off and he'd be like staring ahead as if he was having a conversation with somebody else.
Yes.
And you'd be, Leo, and he'd be like, what? And he'd be like back in the room. And I always felt that's when he was getting like downloads or channeled messages, because he really wouldn't be present in anything I was saying at the time. And then obviously my dad passed away, and Leo had an incredibly close relationship with my dad. They, in my belief, were just part of this same repeating soul family. Like, they've spent so many lifetimes together, with how incredible their friendship was. It was so precious. And when he died, Leo was in bed one night and he woke up, and I heard him get up. I sleep really light. I think it's just, if you're a mother, I think everyone will understand, you never sleep the same.
Yeah.
Because if there's one little noise, or like they roll over or they cough, you sit up instantly. You're like, what's happening?
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember he woke up and I could hear him talking, and I was like, is he sleep talking? What's he doing? And he was stood by his bedroom door, and he was looking straight forward towards the bathroom, and he was like, oh, okay, I'll tell mummy. And he was like, bye, grandpa, and just walked off and got back into his bed and fell asleep. And in the morning, I said to him, I said, oh, what did you dream of last night? He was like, I didn't dream. And I said, oh, you were up and you were talking. And he was like, yeah. He was like, grandpa was there. He was like, he came to see me when I was sleeping. And I was like, oh, so you saw grandpa? And he was like, yeah, I saw grandpa. And then I told him I'd go back to bed. Yeah.
That's
And
so
he
adorable.
does, and it's so beautiful. And don't get me wrong, there's bad parts with it too, where he does get scared. Of course he does get scared. But the times that are beautiful, like when he sees my dad, it's incredible. I wouldn't change it for the world for him. So yeah.
Wow. So it must also be for yourself, going actually back in your mum's shoes at a time when you were seeing spirit,
Yeah.
or you still are, but as a child. And how does dad and his brothers and sisters react around it as well? Because they're They don't see spirit at all or less?
Well, Gabriel's he's just turned 3. I don't feel like he sees spirit. I don't get that vibe from Gabriel. It's hard. There's not really. I think because of the way I am and working with spirit, I've got my crystals everywhere, all my oracle decks. I do readings of people. Like, our house is full of all these things that are based around spiritualism. I think because of that, it's just so normal to the other kids. It's not like, oh, it's strange, I don't get it. They just kind of, and if Leo will say something about my dad, about grandpa, my stepdaughter Scarlett would be like, oh, did you speak to grandpa? And it's encouraged, and it's amazing. There's no like, no, that's just your imagination, don't be silly. I think because it's how I live, and it's so normal to them all, it's never questioned that it's not real or normal or Leo's imagination, or vice versa. It's very openly received by everybody really in our family.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I think that because he can actually develop really strong abilities as well over his life. And how does it work with school? Probably people want to know that. Does he say anything at school? And how about teachers? Do they come to you like, oh, he had this imaginary friend? Or
that doesn't happen much. I mean, when he was at nursery, yes, he still had Bobby and Harvey were an active part of his nursery setting. Which I would just say, they're just his friends, he sees them, and the teachers will be fine, and it's fine. They can say they're imaginary, it's their view, it's their opinion. We're all allowed to have our own belief, aren't we?
Yes.
But in terms of how he is at school, not that he doesn't come home and say he's in spirit or anything like that, but what I would say is he's intensely more aware of other people's emotions, and therefore he takes them on. So he's very like that empath energy, which I think comes part and part with working with spirit or any type of healing work that you do. I think that's always a part that you're going to hold, where your heart is just very open to people and you do really feel deeply. And he struggles with that sometimes, I think, as well as a boy. And there's this whole horrible thing of boys shouldn't cry and boys need to be brave. And, he has a lot of anxiety around not being with me. And he can get if somebody's upset at school, that really hurts him. And he'll come home and he'll share it with me like, oh, it was really sad because this happened. Which I think for 5 years old is quite unusual, to feel people's feelings and understand them. But again, he has always been that way. When my dad was, poorly for the 3 years of his cancer, Leo used to, and I mean, he was like 2 years old, and we used to go up to hospital, and my dad would be having treatment and be on some type of, IV, and be kind of in and out of consciousness. And Leo would just sit next to him in bed so peacefully and just cuddle him. And at 2 years old, you just wouldn't. I mean, Gabriel would not do that. Gabriel would be running around the hospital doing laps, trying to take everyone's IVs out, most likely.
What's this button for?
Like to press that button, like to completely turn off their life support. But Leo was just so aware how people felt, and so aware if my dad was poorly. It was almost like he sensed, like that sixth sense, he just knew. And he would then lower his energy to meet my dad where he was, which my mum used to say it's just fascinating to watch him be in spaces with people that were more vulnerable or more poorly. It's just, I found it amazing. It's amazing. I think part of working within the world of spirit, it just opens your heart to things a lot deeper. And I think as well, it comes down to being that like old soul, new soul. Gabriel really strikes me as such a new soul, like his spirit, he's learning everything almost to me for the first time. Leo was like an old man in a child's body. Like some of the stuff he'd say, you'd just be like, what? Like, how do you even know? Like, why do you even understand that? Even death, like his understanding of death is incredible. Like he just so gets it on such a deep level. And I think that is to do as well with his soul, like how old his soul is.
Because he's been through it, and like you said, he knew, or he knows about his past lives as well, and he remembers it.
He's told me all sorts. And it's weird when he tells me about his past lives, it almost rings true to me in a weird way in how I repeat certain patterns in my present life now. So he'll say, I've got a huge fear, and I think a lot of mums have this, but around like not letting my children down, but just not showing up for them fully as they need me to. And he was about 3.5, I think, and he was telling me how he had no family when he was alive before, and he went and knocked on people's doors because he needed food. He was like, I had no food and I was really hungry and it was raining and I was only small. He was like, so I knocked on people's doors, and he said, and I knocked on your door and you turned me away.
Oh,
And I was like, oh, I turned you away. He was like, yeah, I knocked and I looked at you and asked you if I could come in and live with you and have food. And you said, no, I can't. And you turned me away. He was like, so I didn't live with you in that life. And again,
wow.
then that really rings true to me now with this fear I have, where I don't want to ever not show up for him fully, because it's such an
Wow.
like an embedded fear where I have in a past life, in his view and in my view, turned him away before and not loved him as I should have.
Yes, but I think
So
particularly at the age that you said, like 3.5.
yeah,
My
yeah.
my niece and nephew are 3 and 5.
Mm,
My niece is also an older soul, I believe, personally.
mm,
Um, but yeah, if I look at them and they would say that, you would be like, wow, okay, there's like no denying in this, because even if it were to imaginary, quote unquote,
mm.
children would not come up with that.
No,
They would
not at
not
that age
come
either.
up
No.
with that.
And
No.
not with the understanding around it of how it felt and the descriptions and the
Yes.
whole way, just the whole way it unfolded. It's not, he's been like, the stuff he said over the years has been like those moments where you're like, oh my gosh, like I can't
Wow.
believe you just said that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very deep. It's very
Very
deep.
deep, very deep.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
how do you protect him? How do you, yeah, and how do you go about it? Really, as teaching him, like not everyone sees that, or not everyone would understand this, but also
Yeah.
how do you protect him not drawing in other people's energies too much that it will go into his body,
Mm.
his physical body, but also maybe unwanted energies. How
Yeah.
do you, that must be the biggest challenge, I guess,
It's
for
the
you.
biggest challenge, yeah. And it's a challenge as well because I work with spirit in my home. So because I read for people within my home, there's always activity in my home. And it's not that it's bad, but it's not necessarily always the best thing. So I personally have to cleanse and clear my house a lot and my energy a lot and make sure that any portals that could have opened have shut down and everything's just fully shut down, right? But in terms of him and protecting him, what we got to a point of was where he was like I was as a child, waking up, screaming, like having these awful, awful experiences, saying that he couldn't be in his room, he wouldn't be upstairs on his own, like he was terrified. So me and my husband decided that we'd create some type of nighttime prayer, which we do every single night religiously, and even Gabriel does it as well, where it's just a prayer that it's the same words every single night, and we talk about helping him feel safe, keeping him protecting, take away anything scary. And then we end it with the word amen, which I'm not necessarily that, like, I don't have a religion, but for me that word holds a lot of power because of the meaning behind it. The word amen holds a lot of power and a lot of beautiful, powerful energy. So for him to say that at the end of his prayer, for me, feels like it almost seals it. And then we do a lot of white light bubbling. So he'll put himself in like an invisible egg and he'll
Yes.
stay in his egg, which is what my mum used to teach me. So it's just natural for me to teach him just to stay in your egg. And your energy is yours, it's precious, your boundaries are yours, like you don't give them away freely, which is really important. And in terms of people understanding, we haven't really got to that part yet, I guess, where he's still so young. It's not something I've had to experience where he's come home and been like, oh, like I'm maybe not like everybody else, or that type of thing. But I'm sure when that comes, it will be a whole nother learning curve for me and for him.
Yes.
And it's, for me, it's just about him feeling so safe in his truth. Like if your truth is that you see certain things, then I support and love you fully. It doesn't matter if another doesn't understand, because we're not all meant to understand, are we? We're not all meant
Yes.
to know the same things or believe the same things. We're so different in
Yes.
so many ways, and that's what makes us so incredible.
Yes.
So I just would, encourage him, I guess, to come from that space of understanding others, but holding your own truth, because that's what matters most.
Yes, I think it's beautiful. And I really like what you said. We're not meant to know the exact same things and not to believe the same things. I really like that sort of quote,
Yeah,
because if we were to do, we can't support each other, and now we can support each other.
yeah,
And you do support a lot of women, mostly with your grief and spirit,
yeah,
women and men if they need. And I believe, if we have listeners that do get really attracted to this as well, because, oh, my child is going through the same thing, but I don't understand it.
mm,
I believe you can always contact Phoebe
yeah,
to for you to help, because you support people. That's what you do. That's your purpose,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it's beautiful.
Yeah, and like we said as well earlier before we started the recording, if there's something that I don't know, because I don't know everything, but if there's something I don't know, but I know that somebody else that works within that type of thing is better suited, then it's like the recommendation and sharing that, because it's literally about just helping each other as one
Yes,
whole thing, isn't it? It's not like, you're here, I'm here. We're all one.
we're all
Um,
one. Yeah.
yeah, so I'm more than happy to recommend all sorts of mediums and people, and help people that will help with things.
Yes,
Myself, yeah, always.
exactly. Yeah, we've got a beautiful support circle going on, and it keeps growing. It
Yeah.
keeps growing and growing, and I think I almost see it as I always, when I think about the support circle, which is, I think is a beautiful word in itself,
Mm.
I feel ours is almost like infinity symbol.
Yeah.
Just one circle. There is another circle, but it's
Mm.
like different infinity circles intertwined,
Endless, isn't it?
endless, and then it becomes the flower of life,
Yeah, beautiful.
because that's what it is. Looking into the future, how do you see yourself helping him develop his abilities? Because he seems to be open for it, from what I understand from you.
Yeah.
And how do you, yeah, how would you go about it? Have you thought about that already?
Yeah, I've thought about it quite a lot recently, actually, just because, again, of this whole stigma around working with spirit, that you're doolally and it's, it doesn't make sense and all this. And I just feel like for him, my encouragement would be, if he wants to do it and pursue it, then I would so support him. But if he chooses not to, then that's also so fine. I think it's not my job to shape who he becomes. And whilst I see such an amazing gift in him, I really do, it's not my job to be like, well, you have to pursue mediumship and you have to be this when you're older, or you need to mirror how I've worked, because it might not be the path for him. And I think as well for men, as he grows into, which is terrifying for me to think about, but as he grows into a man, that might not even be anything that he wants to engage in, working with spirit. And whilst I'm going to raise him that way, and he does all his little meditations, he's got his own little card deck, and he does and he doesn't read for, like the general public. He'll do it for like me or my mum.
Yeah.
And he's got his crystals by his bed, and he knows about all these things. And I will always teach him, and we will always make that a part of our lives, but I'm never going to force him to then fit into that box. If it's something that he doesn't want to do, something that he decides he doesn't believe in anymore, like something he completely wants to shut down, then I'm completely fine with that. I will
Yes.
not force him. Yeah, he
You
has to discover
support,
it himself, doesn't he?
yes, exactly. You support his path and not the
Exactly.
person, basically. Well, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like with my mum and dad, when we got past the whole fearful part, they really tried to encourage it. Like, my dad bought me my first deck of oracle cards, and my mum would get me all these books on auras and all these sorts of topics when I was a teenager. But I just didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it. I didn't feel seen in it. I felt like people would judge me. And obviously now in my 30s, judgment to me is really not a thing. Therefore, that's why I've really opened up to it. And because my dad died. So it gave me that reason. And I think for people in their past, there'll be a reason in everything. And if he chooses not to, he doesn't. Or if he chooses that, something happens when he's in his 20s or 30s and he decides to then explore it, then it's perfect. Like, everything is part of your plan and your path. And I'll just trust him and support him in that. Yeah.
Very beautiful. That's very beautiful. I think also what I see talking to different people with abilities, different connections to different universes and dimensions, and so on. Often we lose touch with what we know and believe in our teenage years.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot, and including myself. Like, I was, like I said, my mum used to introduce me to crystals, and then I completely lost it for quite a long time.
Yeah.
What do you think that is? Is it because then in that age we're so vulnerable of what other people think?
Yeah, I honestly, I've spoken to so many women that have teenage daughters. The pressure that society puts on these kids breaks my heart. First of all, they don't know if they should be this, if they should be that, should they be this? Like, they don't know their sexual orientation. They're made to feel they should look a certain way. My stepdaughter just signed up to a gym. She's 15. And I think, like, what? Like, when I was 15, I was like still like out for the day exploring and like off with my mates and stuff like that. But there's so much pressure from society to discover who you are at such a young age. If I'm really honest, I've only recently just started to discover who I am, and I feel that will actually be an ongoing process for the rest of my life.
Yes.
You're, as a teenager, you're not only battling like hormones and all these changes, but you just don't know who you are. You don't know who you are, and you're almost like reaching out for someone to just be like, this is the path, this is what you're going to do, but there's nothing there. And then you just get lost in all this chaos of trying to fit in, and therefore suppress so many beautiful parts of yourself because you're trying to fit in, or you're trying to follow what others do, or you're trying to make something that's yours, but it's, you know, it's all a bit jumbled because you're just not clear enough. So I think that age is so immensely hard. I think it's so necessary, because I do think it's necessary. But I think that for the majority, if not, you know, all, in my opinion, teenage years are, I would be so surprised to see anyone being like, yes, I'm a psychic medium at the age of 15. And I deeply believe everything I work with. That would be amazing.
Yes.
But I think there'd be so many other influences that made them feel they need to shut parts down or be something different, or do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And does it comfort you that things, even talking about these things, are becoming more normal, well, not, I don't want to say mainstream, but especially crystals? I found the amount of youngsters, like, I'm now on TikTok. Who would ever thought that Laura is on TikTok? I'm on TikTok. But the amount of young ones that know more than me, they know more than us. I think it must also give you a bit of comfort as a mum.
Massively,
to think, oh, maybe he can be who he is more so when he's a teenager.
It's a trend, isn't it, at the moment? To be spiritual is a trend. And in my opinion, I've been asked about this a few times actually, like, oh, do you worry? Do you think it's bad? I think it's the best trend that could ever exist. When the trends when I was 15 was like wearing the blackest eyeliner I could find and drinking a bottle of alcohol on a park bench. So to see this as a trend, I think is incredible. I think there's risks, of course, in terms of protection. Like we said earlier, when you work with spirit, it's not always rosy, posy, light, love energy. There's obviously, as in life, people are dark, as in spirit, there's dark. So in terms of protection and, you know, perhaps making mistakes, I would worry on that part. But then I think that's why it's important, like this podcast and other people that do similar things are really open about sharing their knowledge, you know, like this is how you protect, this is what you need to do before you read your cards, this is what you do if you're going to work with your chakras and open your third eye. It's not keeping it a secret, like, well, I know all this knowledge and it's up to you to work it out yourself. It's very much like, this is open, it's an amazing thing to explore, I encourage you to do it, and ask everybody everything, like find out as much as you can. But no, I think it's an amazing trend. I think it's the coolest trend we could have ever had, to be honest. And I think it's come at a perfect time. Yeah, because we need a lot of more protectors as well. And we're talking briefly about the Starseed children. They're sort of born 2018, 16, 18, roughly, mostly, until now. So hopefully they will even be more stronger connected to the universe, however you want to call it, to protect the world and protect the souls that live in it. There'll be a lot of children that go into types of healing, types of raising vibration, working with spirit, you know, even, you know, what, like understanding deeply about the planet and our nature and our earth and all of those things. There's going to be a huge shift, and I think it's really important for parents to just not shut anything down, like just be so open to anything. Like our world is like a crazy place, and new things are spoken about, discovered all the time. And I think whilst we are human, we are here to be human, it's so important. We also need to remember our soul lessons and our soul purpose. And my encouragement would be just for any parents, even if you don't understand it yourself, just remember we're not all meant to understand, and just see your children for where they are. Because I feel a lot of kids are going to be a huge gift to the planet, in healing the planet after everything we've been through.
Very beautiful. And that's also, I think, great advice. What would you say to those who maybe secretly listening to this from their partner because they suspect their child may know more, but they can't talk about it with their partner? So they secretly listen to the Tiny Lost podcast. What would you say to them? Like, how would you go about it without because it could be scary, I imagine, if you don't know anything about it. Maybe they don't believe them themselves, any of this. What would you say to them? How to go? What's the next step after listening to this podcast?
I just think it's like finding your people, like find the people that see you for where you are. So you might have friends that have similar stuff, share it. You can speak to me. I will talk to people all day about their stuff, whether it's grief, my female work, spirit, anything. I love answering questions. And like I said, sharing knowledge and passing people on to other people that know certain things. So it would be just find the people that see you for where you are, and don't shut away something because of how you fear how it will be seen by others. Like we do that throughout our whole lives. We don't do things because we worry about how it will be seen by other people, and it's just not something that serves us on a soul level, and it's, in my opinion, just will not serve our children. If we worry about how other people might see how we're doing something with our child, you're almost like not letting the child down, but you could be just support them. Like you don't need to worry how others are going to look at you.
Yes.
It's not a thing. Just remove that fear of judgment and just show up for your children fully. However, these ideas might come from them, these things and all these visions, and they might be completely crazy and wild, and you might be like, oh my God, like what is this? But just be like, yeah, I see you, like it's amazing.
Yes.
Amazing. You don't need to change a thing.
No, you don't need to change a thing. And they definitely don't need to go to a psychic ward and have drugs pumped in them because they've got ADHD or any of that stuff.
And I get told all the time that my son has ADHD. People say it all the time to me. He's got
Really?
ADHD. He's got ADHD. And for a while, I really believed it. I was like, he must have ADHD. But he doesn't have ADHD. He's just got all of this stuff going on that is like complex for a 5-year-old, along with all of that kind of way he feels other people's emotions.
Yes.
So yeah, I would just see your children for where they are, and allow your mind to be a bit more open, perhaps not always looking just straight down that one tunnel.
Yes.
Just be it, because there's so many people and so many mums like me that will be so supportive and understanding of like what you're going through, it whether it's good, bad, scary. There's always
find the right people.
Yeah, I think as well, sometimes with the way our world is, if a child shows anything that's slightly outside a box that is normal, then have to be labeled instantly as ADHD or autistic. And whilst of course there's children that have those journeys for them, schooling are quite quick to do that, where they'll be like, oh, they're very overexcitable, or they talk too much, or they can't sit still. They won't look into anything outside what's normal. And that's the sad thing, because really our children are all beautiful in their own amazing ways, and they're all individual, and the way they are doesn't need to be changed at all, or labeled, or they're perfect. So it's just letting them discover who they are themselves.
Very beautiful. Thank you so much, Phoebe. I do think I hope that we've helped people with this again and support people. And if you look for support, you can always contact us, because we know a lot of people that would be able to, either we can help you ourselves, or we know people that can help you and support you.
Yeah.
And I love Phoebe's wise words. Serve your children, be there for them. And we don't always have to know the same things, and we don't have to always believe the same things.
Exactly.
Beautiful words. Thank you, Phoebe.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Always a pleasure, and have a wonderful day. And for the listeners, don't forget to like and subscribe to Tally Loves Podcast, and please share it as well, because our beautiful community is growing and we love to grow and support other people. Have a wonderful day. Bye.